We'll take our time to go through the Scrum framework over the next few videos, and let's start with the product backlog. Remember, it's a living dynamic document, something that continually evolves throughout the entire life of the product that it's actually supporting. It's the first of the items that we have in the Scrum framework infographic that you see in front of you right now. And so it's a really, really good starting point. And I find that if we get this right, the whole of Scrum and the whole of Agile really sort of seems to fall into place if we really understand this. Just jumping to the end quickly, what we want to end up with is understand that our focus is on what creates value. That's the focus of the product backlog. We are going to get into the habit of relentlessly reprioritizing. So we don't make a plan and then try and stick to the plan no matter what. We're continually reprioritizing. One thing that we need to understand is that we may reprioritize on an hourly basis in some cases, and I have certainly done that with projects that I've been involved with. Plans can literally change from hour to hour. The next thing is that detail planning is only saved for those items which we're about to start working on. We don't want to put detail planning into things at the bottom of the product backlog. And the other thing is get started right now with your project. You need information, you need knowledge, you need feedback in order to know whether your product backlog is in the right order, whether it's been prioritized in the right way. So we're really talking about a product backlog being a state of mind. And I think it's something that can be used for pretty much anything that we need to tackle, whether it's a problem or a project or anything. The important thing is it's not a checklist. And I think that we suffer a little bit because traditional project management has always started with the idea that we don't start a project, we don't start doing anything until we've got all the requirements listed in great detail and we've actually got our entire set of requirements totally nailed down. With Agile, with a product backlog mindset, we don't do that at all. As you can see here, only those items at the top are the ones that we are focusing on and refining in great detail. The rest is we leave as flexible as possible. There's this concept of leaving your decisions to the last responsible moment, and it's important that we can do that so that we can make sure that we get there we get things in the right place at the right time. So the idea is that once we've refined those few things, we agreed that it's the top of the priority. So we know that that's the thing that we wanted to deliver, and that's great. But now we're saying that there are the things that go into the sprint, and we'll talk about the sprint backlog in one of the next videos that's coming up. But that's where we put our focus in terms of refinement. We know that we can add things late in the day with an Agile product backlog. We know that we're going to reprioritize things, and in this example we've reprioritized an entire epic. An epic is a group of features, and we've also reprioritized features themselves either within the own epic or we've actually moved them through epics as well. And this is based on a real life project that I worked on, so these are real things that actually happened. The other thing is that as we're then moving down through the product backlog, as we're putting things into the sprint and those are being worked on, we then start to focus on the detail of those items and we start to refine the bigger items into smaller items. Remember, again, in Agile, we're looking to only take into a sprint those items that we can deliver in that sprint. So we don't want things spilling over into multiple sprints. And we also get into this habit of the idea that we are not going to try and deliver everything in the product backlog. That is not the idea of the product backlog. It is not a checklist. We don't get a prize for completing everything on the list. We get a prize for delivering the most value with the least amount of work. That's the goal. So if we compare this, again, let's go compare and contrast to traditional project management. With traditional project management, we have something called the iron triangle. This is where time, cost, and scope is generally fixed. We try and fix that in order to be able to deliver a project without any slippages, without any scope creep or anything like that. What we know is that in today's world, with volatility, with uncertainty, with complexity, complexity and ambiguity, we don't have the luxury of being able to tie things down like this. What we do with Agile is we replace scope with the idea of value. So we still fix time and we still fix cost where we can, but what we do is we focus on what can we deliver, what value can we deliver given those constraints, and that allows us then to be more flexible, and it allows us to actually deliver things that make sense. So if somebody comes along late in the day and says, hey, I really need this feature to be in order for us to deliver it, you don't need to go through that change request process. You can actually just say, yeah, no problem. If this is more important than anything else that is in the backlog, then just help us understand what is less important, and we will move that down, and then agree that that might be something that we don't then deliver. Again, time and cost may be fixed, and that's absolutely fine. But what you're doing is constantly focusing on constantly iterating and evolving what it means to deliver value. Let's look at an example then of a traditional list and how we approach that. And again, this is this is real life again. When you're thinking of planning a wedding, you can go on to Google or any other of those search engines, and you will find a number of examples of checklists for a wedding. And the number of items on there are just massive, and they're split between the different elements. So a year out, sort of 6 months out, 3 months out, and so on, and it's all there. So for me, a list like this just becomes overwhelming. You don't know where to start, you don't know what to do, you end up focusing on the wrong things, and not delivering the value that you need. When it came to our wedding, we focused on some basics. We basically said, when we put it into product backlog mindset, we said what's important is the ceremony. That's the most important thing. So how do we deliver the ceremony? The next most important thing was, I really wanted it to be on a beach, and so on. You can see there the list that we created. What we said was, these are the things that will help us deliver the thing called, or the product called, wedding for us, and that would deliver us the value. Now, obviously, everybody is different and everybody will approach it in a different way, which is why there are a number of ways of solving for this. But it's just important to understand you're breaking things down and you're saying what has the most value, what do we need to move around. And with our wedding, there was a situation that happened. It was rain that was made the difference, and that caused us to have to make changes even at the very last minute. And thank goodness that we were flexible enough and we were adaptive enough to be able to respond to the circumstances that we were faced with. So just to then summarize this, what are we looking at? How are we focusing on this? The product backlog is a list of options and ideas, not a list of requirements, and that's important. It's a list of the things that will get you the value out of the thing that you're doing, the product that you're delivering, or whatever that is. It's a living artifact. It's constantly moving, and sometimes moving on an hourly basis. As a product owner, you need to be reviewing your product backlog, certainly every 2 days at least, if not daily. We don't wait for the product backlog to be complete before we get started with delivering. And my experience is that most of the features that we identify, most of the items that we identify, most of the options only really become clear in the second and third sprints. Because that's when we start to learn about the reality of what we're working with. There we go, I just said that. The next thing is that the detailed planning, as we mentioned this before, only happens with those items near the top of the product backlog. You go as far as you can, but you focus on the top ones because you don't know what you're going to end up maybe deleting, things that you're going to end up not doing. And you don't want to have invested a month or two in detailed planning of something that you later decide you just don't need. It should contain everything that needs to be, everything that could be done, all the options, all the ways of delivering the value, and also all the improvements that you're making. So as a team, if you are having regular, which you should be, having regular retrospectives, you want to make sure that any improvements to your ways of working are also included in the product backlog, and at least one put into the very next sprint, one at a time there. Remember, we never intend to deliver everything in the backlog. We don't have to. The focus is to deliver value. We don't have to deliver everything in the backlog in order to achieve the results that we want. And the last thing to really remember, and this is one thing that I learned right at the beginning of my time in Scrum, was that a user story, in other words, an item, a feature, whatever you want to call it, but a user story, all it is a promise to have a conversation. And you're driving collaboration and good conversations within there. Obviously, the product owner, we've mentioned this before, is ultimately accountable for this, but that's where we want to get to. So leave you where we started, our focus on creating value, reprioritize relentlessly, detail planning only for items that are you're about to start working on, and get started straight away. Hopefully some ideas there to help us really get our mindset right around what it means to be agile. And again, I think that if we get this right for the product backlog, the rest of it tends to flow quite nicely.